Last night, the five of us were together for game night. Abby joined us via FaceTime, yet it almost felt as good as her being there in person. Looking at these sweet faces and thinking over the past 13 years since this picture was taken, I realize that this is still how I see them in my heart. I have two children in their 20s and a teenager. Did I see this 30 years ago when I decided to move to Charlotte? Becoming a mom was always on my mind. I envisioned having at least 4 children. Instead, I have 3 birth children and now have a wonderful almost daughter-in-law who balances out our act. I have shared my home with 2 dogs and a total of 5 cats, as well as the 3 cats who adopted our property as their home base. My life feels full, overflowing with love. My son has taken our boxes of more than 30 years of pictures and has been scanning them into digital format for us. I helped him sort some of them by date and shared many memories and laughs with him, sweet, tender moments, silliness, and a few pictures from my teenage years. There were more than 5,000 pictures in those boxes that had been sitting on the top shelf of a closet. Now we will be able to organize and categorize them in a Google Drive, easily and accessible to all. Today, I stood outside at 6 a.m. before the sunrise. I listened to the sounds of nature and looked at the quarter moon in the star-speckled sky. I recalled camping trips with my kids and our friends from many years ago. One year, Don joined us for a family camping trip, and what I remember most is how it poured rain one afternoon, and the 4 of us huddled in the center of our leaking tent, listening to the sound of the rain. My youngest never had the experience of camping. I have options. I can choose to focus on lack and the experiences she didn't have. I can choose to see missed opportunities and things I wish I had done differently, or I can choose love and abundance. I can recall the memories for the experiences they were and see the gifts in my life as well as for all of my children. They have their own individual paths on this journey we call life, as do all of us. The biggest challenge for me is wishing more connection for my youngest. Her siblings spent more time together in our early homeschooling journey, being only 4 years apart. When I look at this picture, it reminds me of those precious years when the 5 of us were all together under one roof. Trips to the park with the 4 of us, when my minivan was full of spare clothes, random books and papers, and 3 beautiful, creative, noisy children. I see the love they have for each other and especially their baby sister, my last birth baby, who was the missing puzzle piece for our family. This connection that I have created with my children fills me with pride. My husband and I have birthed a family environment of support and connection. Despite the challenges we have been through and those that lie ahead, we know we can count on each other. My son shows up when my daughter moved into her apartment, and she felt strongly about being there for him in his move. My youngest looks forward to game night with the 6 of us, and I believe we all share the love of time together. I see this picture and I know their connection can continue to grow with time as my youngest moves through her teenage years. This reminds me of when our outside cat, Knox, gave birth to 3 kittens. As we were finding homes for them, my then 20-year-old son wanted them to go to one home together. I remember him insisting they have to stay together. He didn't want to see these 3 kitten siblings split up from each other. My greatest wish for my children is no matter where life takes them, that the 3 of them can stay connected and always be there for each other.
Well, hello, this is Don.
And this is Gina.
With Focus Healthy Family. And this is podcast number 87. And today we're talking about connecting through communication. But before we get there, we want to just give a little spot here for a sponsor.
Our sponsor is Q Sciences. I've been a representative for Q Sciences for over a year. I found this company through a friend and did some research and reading about these products. And I really liked what I found when I learned about them, the research and time that they've put into the quality of these products to be better absorbed into the body. Things like the vitamin D spray. Our youngest was on a capsule vitamin D, and yet vitamin D levels remained the same with follow-up checkups. And with the spray, it increased
pretty
almost
strong.
double.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking her levels were maybe 20. And I want to say they went up to 47 or something around that range. And the sleep spray is another great one. It's got melatonin, 5-HTP, and I believe another herbal supplement in there. And because it's a spray, you spray it on your tongue, it gets absorbed more quickly into your body to be more effective to help you in the moment. We're using the B12 spray. We've used the vitamin C spray. They have a Q Max product, which is a multivitamin.
And they also have the CBD, different, a variety of different.
It's full spectrum
full
hemp
spectrum, yes.
oils. They even have a THC free version. It comes in different flavors. There is a mushroom
Oh yeah.
armor. It's called Q Armor. It's a powder, and I get the chai flavor. Put it in my chai tea for a double chai drink.
So instead of, as they say, flushing your supplements down, well, the toilet or the drain, you want to get something like this that's fully absorbed. It's like flushing money down the toilet too, if you're not using a supplement that absorbs well and does well for your body. So that's what Q Science is really about. It's a good, well absorbed, high nutrient product.
They have multiple products. They have child specific products. They now also have some facial cream products. I've been using a night cream to minimize the effects of sunlight and stress and aging on my skin. And they have a hemp lotion. That's also a wonderful product that we've tried. So check us out, learn more. You can find the link at our website,
www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can also go to focusedhealthyfamily.com/Q Sciences, the letter Q and Sciences.
with an S at the end.
With the S at the end, yes.
So I read one of my blog posts entitled "Three Little Birds, Beautiful, Creative, Noisy Children." And I wrote this, I'm not seeing the date, about...
Gosh, Harrison looks like he was about 10.
No, that's not when I wrote this.
Oh,
There's a
just
picture. The picture I reference is when the youngest was like a year old. So
that's true.
Abby would have been 8 and Harrison
We
would
didn't
have
do
been
game nights with all of us.
12. So yeah, this over the
probably about
13 years. So this was
3 years, 4 years.
Oh, this is a recent post. I said 13 years since this picture was taken.
Yeah.
So it must have been at the beginning of this year that I wrote this. So
we're kind of talking about our journey through communication and connection. You know, our journey to connection through communication was part of it.
Yeah. And it all started with a book. So if you're listening in the audio version, be sure to check out the YouTube edition, because we're going to show you pictures and talk about books.
There you go.
It looks backwards to us. Does it look backwards to them?
Well, probably so. But that's all right. Keeping the Love You Find. It was a book. You said I found it. I didn't remember that. I guess. Well, I was going to counseling at the time, and
this was before we met.
And the counselor, Don, his name was Don. He did a program based on Orville Hendricks' imago therapy, and he gave me that book at the time because I was not dating anybody.
This one is for singles. Keeping the Love You Find, a guide for singles.
And so it led us to asking you if you'd join me. I at that time, I think I was in therapy or in counseling for about almost a year, I guess. And I asked you if you would join me because I wanted us to learn how to communicate and connect with each other.
So you were 34 years old. You were tired of relationships not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. You saw yourself wanting to be married in the future and having a family. And so you wanted to do it different.
Yeah.
I remember you asking me, and I was so excited. I had wanted to go to therapy. I'd wished my mom had got me in therapy. I was like, yes, I'll do therapy with you. That was right up my alley. And so this other book, Getting the Love You Want, is a guide for couples. So we went through this Imago training together.
And it's
through counseling, and we started it before we even had a first fight. And we started this. We started dating in March of 1993, and it was very shortly after that. When you know, you know. So the book, it's broken down into three sections. Most days. Part one is the unconscious marriage.
A Freudian slip there. Part one.
Yes, the unconscious marriage. Part two is the conscious marriage. And then part three has all the exercises. So the big thing and takeaway from this is the mirroring exercise, where you're listening to another person so that they feel validated and heard. And we've shared that, and we use that as when you work one-on-one with clients with EFT, and when we work with families and individuals talking about communication. It's such a key part. So that was the beginning of our journey. And so we got married in May of 1994, going on 30 years. And 3 years later, we decided to have a family. And a friend gifted me a book when I was pregnant at the baby shower. And it's about sleep training. And I remember another friend, good friend Julie Meyer, talked about attachment parenting. And I didn't know a whole lot about these different ideas of parenting at the time, although I was a voracious learner and reader and researcher. And the woman who gave me this book, she swore by this method of basically sleep training your baby. And I've held on to this book because
as an example of what not to do.
Yeah. Okay. And I think we probably told the story before of how you felt we really need to just try to let him soothe himself back to sleep.
Well, that first.
How old was he? I don't even remember. 3 months old?
I was going to say he's pretty young. Anyway,
might have been younger. Anyways, we were sitting outside the door and he's crying, and my heart is just like, this just feels wrong. And it took a little while.
Yeah, I was kind of adamant at the time, at the very beginning oh yeah, no, I remember sitting on the floor in front of the door to his room, and it was just painstaking listening to him cry in there and scream.
So, and then do you remember the moment when you decided this isn't right?
I'm not sure what triggered it. But
I was begging and pleading.
Yeah. And I guess I just got, it was coming, kind of coming in both ears, him in there screaming and you begging on this side. It just,
I don't know that I was that loud.
No, that's not that you were loud, but it was just two sides coming at me with the kind of the same thought, really, because he wanted to be connected with us, and you wanted to be connected.
And I was listening to my intuition with parenting. Yeah, I had done a bunch of reading, but I also was tuned into my child. I found the Leche League when he was a newborn, because I knew I was going back to work in 3 months, and Julie had recommended it for breastfeeding support and wanting to have support as I returned to work. And I just was opened up to a whole new world there. There were these moms following attachment parenting, connected with their children, enjoying them, being little. I learned more than about nursing, but about parenting, and they had a library of different books. And that's when I found this amazing, wonderful book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Kids Will Talk. I think this might be one of the first editions of the book.
Yeah, because the newer version is a yellow, big.
With Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. They have published many books.
Yeah, now their daughters.
And revisions of it, yes. So this is copyright 1980.
Yeah. Couldn't find the newer version we have, but
so the workshops that are coming up in January that we have done in the past,
January 9th,
that we do online, and we've broken it down. It's a 2-hour workshop for 6 weeks that covers the contents of this book by chapter, and there's a separate workbook that they created.
2 1-hour sessions a week, so we have twice a week.
So helping children deal with feelings, engaging cooperation, alternatives to punishment, encouraging autonomy, praise, and freeing our children from playing roles. So I found other parenting books through them, and I can't remember exactly when I began reading this in the parenting journey, but I came back to it over and over again. And I think when we folded our library and got rid of books, I actually got a copy, the one about sibling rivalry, Siblings Without Rivalry. And I still have that copy as well.
Well, and what it kind of goes to is that, the first book you talked about was Disconnect. And this is about connect.
Well, and it was that you need to train your child. He needs to be able to self-soothe. I mean, when I read it, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I hadn't been a parent yet, and it made sense. It was about your child need to soothe themselves to sleep.
Overall,
it's a
about
skill
being independent.
They were talking about it as a skill they need to learn. And yet attachment theory, in order for a child to feel secure, he must feel attached. And
First, yeah.
a newborn, when they cry, it is they're communicating with us. They're telling, I need something. And what are their needs? To be loved, to be fed, to be safe and warm. And by feeling those things, they learn to soothe. It's not something you teach them to do by separating yourself. It's something they gain the independence and the confidence because of that connection.
The thinking is almost opposite, that you have to separate to be independent in the future.
But by building the bond and the connection, they grow to being independent.
And it really, when you're talking about the disconnect part, it actually grows them to not be independent, to be dependent on you when you're disconnected like that.
Well, it can lead to different things. It can lead, down different paths. And we talk about that in our workshops. So we had our first baby in November of 1997. He just turned 26. And I fell into attachment parenting and learning about soothing my child when I nursed him to sleep, and when his little sister came along, and we had evolved to reading him to sleep. This was one of my favorite books, even before kids. And this is literally the copy that I don't know if you bought it for me.
Charlotte's Web.
That we would read to Harrison to go to sleep. And it became something we read every night. What my memory is, Abby was born, he was 4 1/4. You were working at Circuit City and would work till 10 or 11. For the first 3 months of Abby's life, she screamed until
kind of colicky
11, 12, 1 a.m. and wouldn't settle. And when you were at home at night, I would read Harrison to sleep. Abby liked to be bounced, but you couldn't sit down. So I'm standing up,
reading, holding the book,
bouncing a baby, because she wasn't always just soothed by nursing. I think it was a hind milk imbalance.
It's not the lightest book in the world either.
Well, because it's a read aloud edition, so it's a very large edition. Where's Papa going with that axe? Said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. Out to the hog house, replied Mrs. Arable. Some pigs were born last night. I don't see why he needs an axe, continued Fern, who was only 8. Well, said her mother, one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it will never amount to anything, so your father has decided to do away with it. Do away with it, shrieked Fern. You mean kill it? Just because it's smaller than the others? Mrs. Arable put a pitcher of cream on the table. Don't yell, Fern, she said. Your father is right. The pig would probably die anyway. Fern pushed a chair out of the way and ran outdoors. The grass was wet and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father.
This going to be a long podcast because we're going to read the whole story.
I love this story. I love it for so many reasons. But what I'm going to talk about, there was an annotated version of this book that I checked out of the library. And I read about how this was not the opening chapter or opening page of the book originally, but it got edited to be moved in front. So reading this story to Harrison over and over again, we got where we had areas of it memorized, and we could literally.
Well, there was a certain point where he would half fall asleep, but and so you'd think you were done, you'd
And
close
you'd
the
start
book and
walk
go,
away.
what do you stop reading for?
Where are you going? So we'd be standing up, just reciting the same things. Once he got into deep sleep, then
you could say anything really.
leave the room. And so we laugh about it now, but I don't know, we did that for a while.
Oh my gosh, yes. The ending, we'd repeat the ending or start over, or sometimes I'd just mumble something.
It's a beloved family story, and it's about listening, really. It's
because yes,
Fern tunes into the animals, and
she connects
with
that the littlest one, the run.
Well, with Wilbur, and Wilbur connects with the spider, and I don't know. It's just one of my favorite stories by E.B. White, and it was the beginning of our parenting journey. Oh, you're taking the books over there. And I've read so many different parenting books along our journey that have helped me evolve and grow as a parent, and the different people I've connected with. And I was digging through our books, because as you know, we moved, and many of them are in boxes. This is called Connection Parenting by Pam Leo.
We met her, didn't we? We met her at one of the conferences. Anyway.
There's a different Pam, and she wrote a book that's really great too. I'm just going to the table of contents because it's been a while since I've read this book.
Oh, we should have marked that something.
Where did it go?
Is there one in there?
There it is. It's just quite a few pages in. It's been a while since I've read this book. And as I looked through the table of contents, I really realized that the book and the message here very much forms our parenting beliefs and how we help other parents and families, fostering connection through communication.
Building relationships.
And building relationships. I'm just going to touch on the chapters of this book. First chapter, connecting with ourselves.
You got to start. I mean, even in the practice I do with working with parents, I always talk about we really got to work on ourselves first, get to know ourselves. Because in doing that, in connecting with ourselves first, a lot of times it makes the connection easier when you going down to the children's part of it,
Put your own oxygen mask on first. Yeah. Chapter 2, connecting with children through respecting their feelings.
Yeah.
I remember when you asked me about the words that describe our parenting philosophy as we were forming our business. And respect.
What was the first word that came out of your mouth?
Respectful, conscious, collaborative parenting, or in a different order, CCR parenting. And so respecting our children. So she has literally a whole chapter about that. Chapter 3 is connecting through listening to children's feelings. And this is the very first chapter of
the how-to book.
The How to Talk book is talking about we really need to listen and allow, not just listen to the feelings, but allow them to have their feelings, allow them to have all the feelings, the ones we might label as positive and the ones we might label as negative. And there's so much more.
Yeah, not taking it personally and all that,
To feelings and just how important it is. And chapter 4, connecting through filling the love cup. Chapter 5, connection through communication that builds relationships. And that's, what we're talking about here is because of these methods I've learned of communicating, the foundation of our relationship, the skills that we wanted were important to us in communicating with each other, we realized were just as important in communicating with our kids. And have we done this perfectly and beautifully over the past
of course
30 years? No. There was a time when I felt so far away from this connection and what happened to our family, and rediscovering that book again kind of helped me retune in over the years. And it doesn't matter where you've started your journey, where you're at, however the relationship
they are, or any of that
began,
you can always
reconnect.
Yeah. That's a big message I always try to get the parents, is never too late. You know, example, I had she was 72, I think, when I met one of my clients, and had a terrible relationship with her kids, and was a kind of a military, and I use that term, I shouldn't, maybe that's not the right, but she was a very strict disciplinarian as a
Very
parent,
authoritarian parent.
yes, and moved back up here to Charlotte, expecting her kids, because her kids lived up here, they would just flock to her to do things, and
She could now have that relationship
Yes.
she wished she.
yeah, and it didn't work that way, and we had to really work on changing her way of doing things, the way of communicating, the way of, well, I think she'd rather tell her kids to go jump on the lake than to tell her that she loved them, you know, and that had to change.
So the way she communicated pushed
Mhm.
them away, and
And
they may have complied when they were little with the authoritarian out of fear, yet when they were off on their own,
well, they built resentment, they built dislike, and I don't know if I'd say hatred. They still talked to her, but they wouldn't do the things she wanted to do, and they wouldn't even call her, you know.
which is why our tagline, how you talk to your children today shapes their future and yours,
yeah.
as it comes back around.
Next.
Connecting through decoding children's behavior. Behavior is a foreign language.
Yeah, that's
And like I talked about earlier, the last one's connecting with our own needs. I'm just going to pass that on to you. Now I need the book back because you've wiped the thoughts out of my head.
here it comes.
When I'm looking at this, the
That's
thought,
my producer out there. That's
and we're back. Mild detour with Don's brain.
always going somewhere.
So communication that builds relationships, how we communicate makes a difference in our relationship. When we are talking to our children and doing things with them, wanting them to engage in tasks and daily activities that they need to do, are we more concerned about what's getting done and that they're doing it when we say and on time? Or are we more worried about a relationship that we have with our child?
Well, like you like to say, is that, you know, in 25 years or 50 years, is that going to be the important? Is that going to matter?
5 years.
Yeah,
Is it going to
that's
matter
true.
that their shoes are left out on the floor, that they don't pick their room up all the time?
Or will they be in resentment for all the anger, all the scoldings, or the, you know?
And even not thinking that far ahead yet, by having that relationship, when there are issues, when there are problems, then they're willing to come to you and talk to you when they feel heard and understood and respected. So you have to start by building that relationship. And it's important in how we communicate when things are calm or when there's not an issue and it's just kind of day-to-day life, because it spills over into problems and things. I know I'm tapping the table. And decoding their behavior, I talked about the baby crying. Sometimes you push it too much. The baby crying is a way of communicating with us. And we need to tune in to what they have, a need that needs to be met. And meeting their needs is important in their growth and their development.
Well, yeah, and as they get older, it's understanding what's underlying the behavior, which is what you're doing there, but a little differently, because now they can communicate with you. And
there's always a reason for behavior.
Yeah. But it goes on, and it goes into adult life. And I mean, even like dealing with what you're going through with your dad, is understanding that some of the things that's going on for him is not about what he's doing or his behavior.
My dad has dementia. We've talked about. He has Parkinson's. With Parkinson's dementia, not everyone with Parkinson's has dementia. Parkinson's dementia there's many different types of dementia. It looks very different than Alzheimer's dementia. He is not totally out of it and in another world, like the woman I was working with over the weekend at the nursing home. who was talking about some ball gown dress and how she couldn't wear it yet because she was not quite old enough, but next year when she turns 16, that she could wear it. And I'm like, oh, we're in our teenage years, even though she's 90, as I'm doing a treatment for her shoulder in her bed in the nursing home where she lives. And then one minute she's got grown kids and she's just jumping around in time. So anyways, it's very different with Parkinson's dementia. And he has delusions that lead to behaviors and fears, and he hears things that people say, and in some ways he takes things literally. And like a child, he's not able to process the information as well. And yet he has more of an understanding in his clear moments than a child would. So he's struggling with this awareness of, oh, things are not right. Why did I act like that? Why does this happen? Why did I do that? And then when he's in that delusion, or he really is so convinced that people are taking his money, that mom's going to cheat on him. And these are very common themes in dementia overall. And I had a patient also with Parkinson's at the nursing home, and she goes through the same thing with her husband, thinking he's leaving her, he's cheating on her, and she says all these things. And
that's not her thinking that is not really the problem. It's what's causing her to do that.
And how we respond makes a big difference. My mom calls me often. She did this morning. We had an episode this morning.
Yeah.
She, a couple weeks ago, she had called me, and afterwards she said, I don't know what you said to him on the phone, but he really calmed down afterwards. And I realized a lot of it was I just listened. I listened to him. There's a point where there's times when I throw in a bit of reality for him that's been helpful. And there's also a lot of times, though, where I need to you're really upset and you're really convinced that someone has taken all your money. And I hear you, and I know you don't believe what we're saying, and I love you. And I asked him today, what can I do to help you? And he kind of just got quiet with that, but just that feeling heard.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to listen. I wanted to help him. I let him talk. And it's quite a balancing act of doing it. And yet it makes such a difference. And my mom's even seen how when she distracts or doesn't make a big deal out of something he's doing, how it definitely
the fears come up for her,
comes
that this is going to
down
go on forever, or that
and as it would for any of us, that when you're living it day to day, just like in parenting, and when we had anxiety in the family, and our kids dealing with mental health crises in the moment of it all,
your mind
that's all you could see, and that was all. It's hard to see past into the future and how this is going to change, and you're trying to get through the day and do what you need to do. So building up on these tools,
you're also kind of projecting in the future that this could go on forever, or that this is going to get whatever, and that doesn't help either.
So having different tools and resources that have helped me over the years. Some of these people I've actually gotten to meet or hear speak. Going through some of the other books. Parenting for Social Change by Teresa Graham Brett. I went to a conference. I can't think of the name of the conference. It was for parents. It was around the ideas of unschooling, which is the lines of child-led learning. It's a kind of a philosophy of one type of homeschooling. And it's more than education, though. It's parenting and connecting with our kids and tuning into ourselves. It was Childhood Redefined was the name of it. And it was us helping to explore our inner child. And I went to this conference. That wasn't the purpose of the conference, but I met the woman who wrote this book at that conference. And I sat at the table with her. And as we did exercises, and I later bought her book, and then I went to another conference that other people at my table were coordinating, the Love to Learn conference up in New York that we went to later this same year. And she did some talks at the conference, and I got to know her a little more. And this is a powerful book. It's not even a really big, fat book. Teresa Graham Brett is a parent. She's an author. She is an educator. And I'll have to share more, maybe do a whole kind of review on this book. But just talking about so many things that we wouldn't think about. And she really examines her own journey raising her kids and how words she used and how she thought about things. Her chapters are the dynamics of control, ways we control children, controlling parenting versus supportive parenting, steps toward liberation and freedom, tools for transformation and change. So it has a very whole social component to it, at the impact on society, and it's powerful. It's one of my favorites. And I found, when I was digging into podcasts several years ago, I discovered Hunter Clark Fields. And
He has a whole podcast.
She has a whole podcast.
It's a
I'm blanking.
Mindful Mama.
Mindful Mama Mentor. She does mindfulness practice, and she has a whole coaching program with families. You can listen to her podcast and learn more. But this is her book, Raising Good Humans. And I've read bits and pieces of this, but it's I have starting to collect ones that I haven't finished reading. Yet when I found her podcast, it was kind of like a aha, and I found it. She talks to a lot of parents of young kids. I mean, she talks to parents of all age kids, but a lot of people that join her group. And here I was, with grown children, child who lived on his own, and yet hearing her philosophies, and it just was very much in line with us.
Well, just real quickly, the two parts of the book, I won't go into each chapter, but the first part is breaking the cycle of reactivity. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is raising kind and confident kids. Yeah. So
and it's very much in line with the principles and philosophy from the How to Talk book. There's so much overlap in different aspects. And when we do workshops, we pull in a little bit more than just that book. And as we work one-on-one with others, we delve into more of these areas in more detail. And that's what we've been doing for parents and caregivers of children, and what we're growing for our coaching adults raising children, still supporting children, as well as
the sandwich generation,
caring for their aging parent or loved one. This book is called The Connected Parent, and this is by Kristen Oliver, who's an occupational therapist.
Who we kind of know and met.
Yeah, and you met and connected with her with integrative doctor in Charlotte, Dr. Sheila Kilbane, and that's also where we met Adele.
Yeah, it was the Three Amigos, I think. I'm trying to remember what they called themselves at one point.
They did a workshop one time where they all three talked on their different areas, and we went to another kind of holistic gathering.
Yeah. Workshop, basically.
Well, and beyond the workshop where we bought this book. And this one I'm in the middle of. And it's all about connecting with your children. And our new studio is in the corner of our living room, and our kitchen's right across the way, where someone's come down to eat. And that's okay. So building relationships.
So we kind of do a summary of, are you ready for that?
We put a clock here so we'd know what time it was, but I don't know what time we started.
We started when the clock was put back.
So as we're prepping for January to do these classes again, it's very structured around that book, and the workbook is made by those authors, and we follow their format and just add our own personal experience and some additional things to it. For the next couple podcasts, we want to expand more on parenting and communication
and connection,
and how connecting with our kids and ways that we can do that, and in how we communicate sometimes can create a disconnection, versus a connection.
Well, I like to think about, what we've learned off of doing those is that communication, it helps your communication, but it also helps behavior, it helps anxiety, and then it helps build relationships. We've seen that come about within weeks a lot of times when we're doing the parents will come back and see those changes happening outside of just the communication.
Communication is important, no matter if we're a parent or not, if we're
Mhm.
just a human on this earth. We have to communicate. We have to communicate when we go to the grocery store. We have to communicate if we're making a phone call, if we're going to the doctor's office, at work, interviewing, trying to get a job, doing tasks, interacting with other people, having a family and a relationship. I mean, communication's everywhere, and there's many different forms of it in 2023, you know,
Well,
beyond just the verbal aspect of it.
well, what I've been learning over this last probably year or so, is that, these things that we've shown you were all based towards kids. That they were writing for parents, for kids.
Except for the horrible hindrance.
Well, yeah, that's true. But they all really fit any age and any situation. Because
With
I've taken
slight nuance.
well,
and
yeah, I
change,
mean,
but
yeah,
the basic
concepts
principles.
of them really fall true. Connecting with friends, connecting with other family members. It all plays.
Well, basic listening skills is
Yeah.
something that we're aware it's important to listen, yet we often all forget what it means to listen.
I'm sorry, what?
And oftentimes people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
Whether you're 54 and you've come home from work and you've had a frustrating day and you tell your husband about it and he wants to solve it or fix it or is busy with dinner, we often just want to be heard. And as I've coached you on years ago, sometimes it just helps to say, wow, that really sucks. And when you use it, I know that I told you about it, but it does help to not try to solve it, not try to fix it, to recognize what someone's saying, to reflect back, oh, wow, I hear you saying this, which gives them an opportunity to correct or further define what they're saying. And sometimes with our kids, how many times have you seen a child fall down, get really hurt, just cry and scream, and you comfort them, and then like, I'm okay, and they go up and go about their day. Our youngest used to do that all the time. And sometimes just letting someone vent and share what's going on, it can be helpful. I know it's helpful to my mom, giving her that space to do that as she's caring for my dad with dementia, and someone with dementia, even in the work I do, working with elderly people and adults. Sometimes they're not elderly, but sometimes with and often without dementia, people want to be heard. Mm-hmm. I evaluate people who come from the hospital to get rehab, and they might have had some frustration in the hospital or a frustrating experience the night before. We usually evaluate them the day after they've gotten there. And we call it therapeutic listening, and building a therapeutic rapport with them is giving them that space to share their frustration and to acknowledge that frustration. I see other professionals at times and people in different disciplines, especially in a nursing home, who dismiss people's feelings and say, no, you're just fine, you're okay, no, that's not true, or and try to push past it, or they've got to get things done. Yet we don't realize when we can be dismissive with someone's feelings and how that just creates more tension. It can create more agitation. I see it especially heightened in people with dementia, but other people as well.
Well, and it's coming the idea that, we have to advocate for our, like you had to advocate for me when I was in the hospital. And I think part of that is listening to what I need so that you can advocate. So it plays into that. I don't know. That just came to me.
It did. And that's a big thing. Oh, I can still remember standing there the one day when I kind of lost it with the staff, that I kept getting told you were going to get therapy, but the order was not written, and I was frustrated with things, and I was really speaking my mind because I did need to advocate, and I did feel like you were not being heard. Mm-hmm. And I had to persist with my communication. So there's skills to learn in how we communicate and how we listen. It's all about communication. It's not only how we talk, but the behaviors we're engaging in response to somebody else. So
Yeah, responding is huge. To me, it plays a huge role in how we respond to anything. We have the options to how we respond, and they can make a big difference. Well, like we talk about, would you rather have a 15-minute conversation or a 2-hour battle? How you respond and how you communicate is what plays on that. Is what makes that difference.
and those 15 minutes or however long you spend now dealing with communication makes a huge difference down the road.
Yeah.
And can have long lasting effects, just like labeling your child, calling them a name in a rough moment where you're frustrated and aggravate, how that can have a very long-term effect on how they see themselves, their self-esteem, and your relationship with them as time progresses. So be sure to check out Focused Healthy Family, our website, to learn more about these workshops that are coming up. January starting.
January 9th.
It's Tuesdays and Thursdays.
It's noon Eastern time, so that you can back that off.
We've split the 2-hour workshop into 1-hour segments twice a week. So we found that was very doable for people, taking a lunch break, not having a 2-hour chunk of time. It's the same material as if it were the 2-hour.
And in that, it's role playing, it's exercises. We get kind of hands-on, even though it's virtual.
And it's a small group setting. We limit it. We typically don't have more than
like 12 people, maybe
4 or 5 couples. We'll go up to as many as 8. And we share the information. It's a learning experience, but doing some exercises. They're not real difficult, and they're simplified in ways that we can learn and practice these skills, because that's what it's about. I can read all these books, right? I can read the theories, and I can be like, oh, that's great. And I believe in that philosophy. And that's why I love the How to Talk book, because it
takes the theories and puts them into.
It gives you some simple tools that you can do. And yes, there's more to it. If you don't really believe it and you're just trying to follow it, like if I do this, then this will happen. No, that could really backfire on you. Yeah. It's really embracing the understanding and the philosophy of it. And that's why I love to talk about all these other different books that I've read, and we will share.
Yeah, we'll do more.
We'll put in check the notes out to see these books that we've talked about today, and know that there's more podcasts upcoming on communication. And as always, we'd love to hear from you. We love your comments, your feedback. Please write a review of us. Share this podcast with someone you know so they can check it out via, whether you're listening to it from wherever you listen to podcasts, or watching it on YouTube with our YouTube channel where we're showing the episodes now. We've started that recently. Check out former podcasts.
If you know somebody that would fit and would like to be interviewed and talk about a subject around all that, parenting and the sandwich generation, communication, all of that, we'd love to hear that too. Contact us and let us know, and we'll be happy to set that up and sit down with you and have a good conversation with you.
You can find us at our website, on Instagram. I'll share this blog in connection with this podcast today as we get settled into our new home, and I can return to having blogs that coincide with each podcast each week. I do have a number of blogs there. There aren't any recent ones yet. I'm at the point where I'm ready to start that up again and get moving with that. And so let us know what you think, your thoughts, and we're looking forward to doing more podcasts and having you join us for workshops.
And remember, how you talk to your kids today shapes their future and yours.